Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Schumann. It is really great to get to know all of you and just take a moment to kind of go over some of our feelings and thoughts about educational leadership. And I thought some of these articles were a really great outline of what this whole course is going to be about. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I hope we can have some awesome conversations. Just getting to know a little bit about me. On a professional level, I am a second grade teacher on Fort Riley. This is my fifth year. It's a little bit wonky because I had graduated mid year, but this is my fifth year of teaching. I'm currently pursuing a master's in instructional technology through Fort Hays State, and I should be graduating in May, which is very exciting. Another kind of exciting component is that my husband and I are transitioning. I've spent all 5 years in the same school as my internship. I've loved my journey at Fort Riley, but it's coming to a close as my husband and I move to Olathe, Kansas this summer. We are both hired on by the district. He is going to be teaching fifth grade, and I'm going to be teaching fourth grade. And even though that'll be a new adventure, I actually had taught fourth grade before second grade, so it'll be kind of like a little blast from the past experience. As far as who I am personally, I've been married to my husband for 2 years. We met going to Kansas State University as we were both training to be teachers. So we're celebrating 6 years together, 2 years of marriage this year. Even though I currently live in Manhattan, Kansas, I actually grew up in Hawaii. My family worked in hotels, and so we bounced all over the country. And once we moved to Hawaii, my dad said, "That's it. This is our home base." And we stayed there until I had gone to college. And then, of course, when I went to college, I met my husband, and then I settled with some new roots here. I currently still live in Manhattan. After I graduated, I started working in Fort Riley, and I stayed here. And I have a very adorable rescue dog that you might see walking around in the background of a few of my videos. His name is Archie. He's a Dachshund Chihuahua mix, and we adopted him right before my husband and I got married. So I'll start by sharing about the mindsets. Part of our task today was to talk about whether or not we agreed with the research. And as I was reading each of these, you can see from my reactions, I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. And so the mindsets of an educational leader, number one, that all students can grow. I mean, that is the point of what we do here. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a para, a librarian, a specials teacher, whatever role you play in the building, it's the foundation that you lay that we feel that all students can learn. Otherwise, there is no real driving force for what we do. Secondly, social capital and teamwork will always outperform individual talent. That's something that I've kind of grown to believe in through years of experience. I firmly believe that it takes a village to teach. I don't think that there is one teacher who has every single answer to meet every single need of every single child. I think by reaching out to the experts in your building, whether it's your teammate, your instructional coach, that child's teacher from last year, a community member, there is no one single person who knows the answers. So if that's a true sentiment for a teacher, then absolutely that's a true sentiment for an educational leader as well. Last, happiness is a choice. We have a whirlwind of a job, and even though a lot of what we do is outside of our locus of control, what we can control is how we react and how we prioritize success and positive attitudes. In the same way that we measure ourselves with a 3-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions with our kids, I think that educational leaders need to be deliberate about how they speak to their staff members as well, and how they speak to the adults in their building. Choosing to have conversations that foster positivity and optimism, I think is a key to success, and that'll be touched on in later slides too. Switching to dispositions, I broke this up because I know that there was a lot of information with the dispositions. As you can see, I just kept agreeing with one thing after the other because all of these ideas were just so idealistic. So, of course, with these dispositions, I also found myself agreeing quite often. Number one, confidence. If you are an educational leader, that means that you need to make a decision that best benefits everybody within your building. And sometimes that's a popular decision, and sometimes it's not. Very rarely are you going to come down with a decision in which every single person who works beneath you is going to agree and is going to follow blindly. I think that with the confidence of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, it's going to be successful for our kids because of X, Y, and Z, others will eventually follow suit if you have the confidence. The article had mentioned that if you are somebody who's kind of walking in sheepishly, like, we'll try it, You might have staff members who are looking for you to break down so that they can say, I told you so. And so if you lead with confidence, I think that as a leader, that's going to help trailblaze some things that might not be that popular to begin with. Risk taker and drive. It's about applying that growth mindset, the same one that we preach to our students, to what educational leaders do in the building. That some things we will try may fail, some things that we try may succeed, some things that we may try may partly be successful, but we have to adjust and try it again. And so if we're saying it in our classrooms, I think that we need to be saying it to our adults as well. Sense of humor, like I mentioned before, so much of what we do is outside of the control. And essentially, at the end of the day, our coworkers are children. And a lot of what they do can be frustrating and challenging if we're not deliberately seeking out to find the everyday optimism and humor in what we do. To kind of continue with our dispositions, empathetically assertive, I feel like that kind of goes back to the confidence of knowing that something may not be popular, acknowledging the process that people go to, that there's going to be growing pains and discomfort. I mean, a great example of that would be right now, my district is switching to an e learning model. As all of our schools are getting shut down for the rest of the year, I know that we're all coming up with different plans on how to best serve our students up until the end of May. And because I work in a district that's one to one, we're really prioritizing e learning and distance learning. And though the decision has not been popular amongst all staff, I know that we have a lot of nervous primary teachers. I know that our kindergartners and our preschool teachers are wondering, how is this feasible with such a young group? We are really now looking to our leaders to lead with confidence and to acknowledge that, yes, oh my goodness, what a struggle that must be. Wow, what a challenge. The first few weeks are going to be difficult. Don't be afraid to fail at some things. Don't be afraid to try new things. But then also pushing forward with, this is our district goal. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but this is where we're going to eventually be. And so I felt like that was specifically applicable to what's going on right now. And above all, a leader should be a learner. I think that all educators should be learners no matter what we do, because children and education are continually evolving year after year. We should not be doing the same thing every single year. We should be making changes and adapting. And I think that a building leader should be leading by example on how to do that. Maybe providing resources, providing professional development for their staff so that they can then evolve their practices. Speaking of practices, the 3 practices: focusing and prioritizing, to make sure that as a building you are keeping things simple, you're keeping things attainable. I think to the keep process. There are a million things in my classroom that I want to change and that I want to improve upon every single year. But when I meet with my administrator and I talk about keep, I talk about setting one goal and then having a clear objective, making it a SMART goal, quantifying it. How will I know I've achieved this goal? And then what action steps do I take to make sure that it's going to be put in place in my classroom? Examining feedback and data. It means not only just sitting down at your quarterly data meetings with your teachers and saying, okay, here's what your reading numbers look like, but it also means inviting feedback from other people about your own performance, whether or not it's releasing parent surveys or asking staff members how they feel about a certain professional development, or what would you like to do during your Wednesday meetings? Would you rather do a book study? Would you rather do committee meetings? And taking the feedback from your community to shape your practices instead of just leading by your own ideas. And then finally, emotional intelligence. An administrator has a tough job with sometimes conflict and discomfort. And to navigate some of these tricky experiences, you have to be an emotionally intelligent person who's willing to show empathy in times that are difficult for you. The 8 principles in which an ethical leader is showing. I found myself again looking at this and saying, yeah, absolutely. I struggled a little bit because I have never been in a position of major educational leadership. Like I mentioned, I've been a classroom teacher for 5 years. I've served on committees and I've led task forces and things like that. But that is a whole different ballpark from what it's like to be an administrator, an instructional coach, a vice principal. And so when I looked at these 8 principles, I was thinking of it through the context of my classroom. I'm a leader of this group of children, or I'm a leader of my parent network. I'm the guiding force towards what we're doing this school year. And so I was trying to think of how these principles would apply in my daily role. Public interest in front of self. Absolutely. There are times when, yeah, it's a lot easier to stick the kids on this reading lesson on their computer versus sitting down and really diving into the nitty gritties. So often as a teacher, we are asked to do things that make us uncomfortable. We're asked to try out things, even though we've become experts of another practice we've been doing for a few years, but now we're trying to do something new. And so making sure that we have the interest of our students before our own is something that we practice daily. Self-control, self-discipline, and integrity. We are public servants. We have a role that's oftentimes underneath a microscope. And I think that we're often called to show a higher level of moral than others. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And I think that self-control, self-discipline, and integrity are some guiding forces to make sure that we are in a good position. Recognizing talent, looking at our students and realizing what they're capable of doing so we can then become more of a facilitator than the sage on the stage. Of course, sensitivity and understanding. If at the core of what we do is a strong community, then we need to develop sensitivity and understanding of who our students are. Courage. I know that this is one that I personally struggle with. Like we mentioned with some of the guiding principles from before, being a trailblazer, being a risk taker, having a growth mindset, not only telling our kids to have a growth mindset, but modeling that in our classroom is important. Task and employee centeredness. This was a tough one that I had a little bit of issues tying back into my classroom, but it did kind of remind me of public interest in front of self, is noticing and recognizing our employee talents. And I'm sorry, excuse me. This kind of reminded me of recognizing talent, where we're recognizing what our students can do, we're recognizing what the people in our building can do, and we're building tasks and goals around that. Requiring high ethics from everybody. We're not just saying, as a school, we preach this value, or as a school, we're all going to be doing lesson planning except for this person. I know they're going through a tough spot. It's that we're asking all teachers, all adults in the building to meet the same high caliber of work. And then, of course, inclusiveness. It's something that as a public school, we are tasked to be. We want to provide equitable access to education for all kids. And so as an educational leader, you should be showing the same inclusiveness to your staff. So looking at my own personal changes, I'm going to go ahead and move my window so you can see. I was reflecting upon the 4 different subgroups of beliefs that we had talked about: mindset, disposition, practice, and principle. Where I found my own challenges or things that I've gone on a personal journey with, first and foremost, mindset. I myself have had a very challenging year as far as behaviors go and academic needs. And then, of course, with what we're doing right now, we're completely adjusting to a new e-learning curriculum. And so making sure that I'm choosing optimism and positivity and happiness, I think would really help lead my classroom better as these families are struggling to put their children into a routine and a structure. Disposition, risk taker, and drive, we're going back to the same conversation. I know myself, I'm on a personal struggle of trying out new things and switching my practices at the drop of a hat, and having to give up a lot of projects that I was tethered to, and having to explore the possibilities of fostering communities and connections through computers. Focus and prioritizing. I know myself, I am the type of person who is constantly distracted by the latest and greatest. I know that I can have a hard time trying to hone in on one specific goal. And so I think that that's a practice as an educational leader that I could put more time into thinking about. And then a principle requiring high ethics from all. I think that you all know that teaching is very subjective, and that we look at kids and their situations in so many different ways. And for example, if I have a homework policy of signing this reading log, but I know that this kid struggles with getting parent involvement at home, then I might let it slide for a few months. Or I know that this kid isn't having somebody help quiz them on their math, so I'm not going to worry about them getting that high grade on their math fluency. but it's making sure that you self-advocate for every kid and help develop that grit for them to have those high ethics. Um, so looking at these guiding principles, these guiding beliefs, and thinking about how does it support students? We so often believe that where the educational leader is and where the students are in two very different places. I think that a lot of us teachers have the mindset of like, I'm on the front line, I'm with these kids every single day. There's very little that my principal does day to day that directly impacts my students. And really, all of these guiding beliefs can help their students. Because what you're doing is you're looking directly at what are their needs, being sensitive to who they are and their experiences, collecting the data and the feedback on their learning, looking at what talents they have in the classroom and how to best use them, and then constantly seeking out professional development in articles and journals on what practices are best for these types of students. And if an educational leader is willing to go through this process time and time again, they will meet the needs of all of their kids in the school. As far as how it supports adults, looking over all of these, I was just thinking to myself of the administrator who helps teachers develop a sense of pride and efficacy. A lot of these were about utilizing the adults in their building as best as they can, recognizing talents, acknowledging struggle, making sure that they develop a grit and a growth mindset. And I think that by having that support in a building, that can really build up the self esteem of a teacher, which can then directly impact the students. If you want to take a moment to look at the references, you can pause and get a better look. I look forward to looking at some of your videos and seeing how you interpreted them and how you guys are reacting to this crazy situation that us Kansas teachers have been thrown into. I look forward to getting to know you all.